Hey everybody, hope you guys are doing good today on the Morning Devo with Bo. It is early. It is 7:23 a.m. and let's see, it's on the 17th. We're on the 17th. We're going to be celebrating Good Friday here coming up tomorrow. Tomorrow. And then what do we got? We got Easter coming up, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, it's my last hockey chaplain morning, so needed to get in early for the devotion. Glad you guys could join me. Tina is up and ready to go, and it looked like Craig was up and ready to go, so that's pretty awesome. So you could always check out the archives at my YouTube channel at Bo Willette, or you can go to just bowillette.com and kind of listen or go through the devotions on a page there too. It'll get you to the right spot anyway. So Luke chapter 9, we're going to read through it today. It is a very cool, kind of all over the place chapter. So let's just go through it. That's the beauty on the morning devotion, is we just get to actually go through the Bible, just read through it. Instead of so much, commenting on it, which, nothing's wrong with commenting on the Bible. I mean, that's what I do. And certainly that's what is good to do, is comment on the Bible. But instead of so much maybe, too much, we can just let the Bible speak and, to us, and just let it talk. Whoever you are, maybe you are that person out there who's skeptical and you kind of tuning in and you're like, that's fine too, man. I was skeptical and certainly not sincere at one point growing up out in Southern California without the Bible, not knowing the Bible, very, very atheistic, like many of us grow up. So it says, one day Jesus called together his 12 disciples, and he gave them power and authority to cast out demons and to heal all diseases. I love how everything comes from Jesus. And then he sent them out to tell everybody about the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. Take nothing for your journey, he instructed them. Don't take a walking stick, traveling bag, food, money, or even change of clothes. Wherever you go, stay at the same house until you leave town. And if a town refuses to welcome you, shake the dust from your feet and leave to show that you have abandoned those people for their fate. So they began their circuit of the villages, preaching the good news and healing the sick. Now Jesus has been doing tours, and now he gives he grants this authority gifts, this grace gift to the disciples to be able to do similar things as a representative of the Messiah, to show that the kingdom of God is right there, and it's time. Give your life to the Messiah. And I love how they just need to rely on what they have, what they get from other people, as they go into these towns. That they're not to, in a sense, have like a treasure chest where they're, dipping into it. You get the idea that there's not much of a fallback, and maybe today, if I have a fallback, I will end up falling back, instead of really stepping out, instead of moving forward, stepping out in faith, kind of thing. That walk by faith. God has given me an authority today. It's not from me, it's from God. And I get to step out in faith now and trust him. Or am I waiting until my barns are filled with everything and then I'll go? Is that kind of your attitude? Is, I'll serve the Lord, but first I got to get this and this and this and this together. I love how it's just like, hey, go. And you know what? He says, don't even take a walking stick, man. Hey, how many of you guys like your walking sticks when you're on that trail? And Jesus says, just go and see what God's going to do. It's very cool. When Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee, heard about everything Jesus was doing, he was puzzled. Some were saying that John the Baptist had been raised from the dead. Others thought Jesus was Elijah or one of the other prophets risen from the dead. So there's lots being said about Jesus, and maybe there'll be a lot of misunderstanding about you too. And You know what's interesting is just as there was a lot of misunderstanding of Jesus back then, so there is today. And I certainly grew up having a ton of misunderstandings. You know, I saw this video the other day of a teenager sitting in his room and mocking what's called the Trinity, the Godhead, 3 in 1. And he did it on such a nonchalant way. Oh, I'll disprove the Trinity, and he really, when you watch the video, he didn't even know what the Trinity was. But I relate to that young man, that young kid, man, because you know, sometimes we don't know what we're talking about when we're growing up, and we have a lot of misunderstanding of who Jesus is. You know, sometimes when we talk to people, we just have to say, hey, what do you think, you know, about God, or what do you think about, and let people talk, and maybe try to then go from there, you know, and meet them where they're at in their understanding. I certainly had a very, 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 very poor understanding of the Bible, coming from more of a Marxist philosophy kind of worldview. And so Herod says, I beheaded John, who is this man whom I hear such stories, and he kept trying to see him. So Herod is curious, and there's always people that are curious about Jesus. I mean, how can you not be curious about Jesus, right? You know, very interesting figure, a person who has influenced the world of all people. This person did. And it says, when the apostles returned, they told Jesus everything they had done. Then he slipped quietly away with them toward the town of Bethsaida. But the crowds found out where he was going, and they followed him. And he welcomed them and taught them about the kingdom of God. And he healed those who were sick. And so the apostles returned, and they are pretty excited. And I think... you know, I hope my ministry life is one of excitement. You know, there's always excitement there. Hey, this is what God's doing. Hey, this is what God's doing. You know, is yours all dudded out? You know, when you minister, are you like, oh God, you know, look at that person. That guy's, you know, this person. You know, if you're online, just so you know, if you're online, there's always going to be people that are going to have comments, all kinds of mean things said. You know, it's just the way it is, you know, but to walk away and go, oh man, what a bummer, this person's saying this and this person's saying that. It's like, hey, that's just the nature of the internet, you know. It's like people kind of, and that's the nature of going out in the world and sharing the gospel too. I mean, people are going to say what they say, but are you excited about the word that you get to share? Are you excited that God is touching people? And going to use the words that you share and speak to people. You know, are you excited about just the mission of being an ambassador of Christ? You know, or are you all dudded out by things again? Are you all, oh man? I love how the disciples are pretty stoked. Late that afternoon, the 12 disciples came to him and said, send the crowds away to the nearby villages and farms so they can find food and lodging for the night. There's nothing to eat here in this remote place. But Jesus said, you feed them. We have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, they answered. Are you expecting us to go and buy enough food for the whole crowd? For there were about 5,000 men there. And Jesus replied, tell them to sit down in groups of about 50 each. So the people sat down, and Jesus took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, looked up toward heaven and blessed them. Breaking the loaves into pieces, he kept giving the bread and fish to the disciples so they could distribute it to the people. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterward the disciples picked up the 12 baskets and leftovers. I love it. Jesus does something amazing, does something great. You know, in the hands of Jesus, things are amazing. When they get in our hands, man, we get skeptical. We wonder, hey, could this really happen? Can God really do it? Da, 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 da. But in Jesus' hands, I love it. There's a multiplication, right? And then he gives it to us so that we can distribute. We're just distributing the good things that he has. You know, that's what we're doing. So cool. It says, one day Jesus left the crowds to pray alone. Only his disciples were with him, and he asked them, who do people say that I am? Well, they replied, some say you're John the Baptist, others Elijah, like Herod, wondering. And others say you are one of the other ancient prophets risen from the dead. And then he asked them, but who do you say that I am? And Peter replied, you are the Messiah sent from God. So Jesus warned not to tell anybody who he was. The Son of Man must suffer many terrible things, he said, and he will be rejected by the elders, the leading priest, and the teachers of religious law. He will be killed, but on the third day he will be raised from the dead. It must be a mind blower when, we do understand just how depraved we are as human beings. I mean, it's really one of those hardcore ideas that even the elites would do something so radically harmful. And it's funny how human beings were so fickle, right? It doesn't matter who's in office. It doesn't matter who's in politics. We tend to finally get to a place where we see some atrocity, something going on, and we're almost blown away by it, which is really the odd thing, right? Where this has been going on forever, right? And meaning every group of people, human beings are the problem. It's just humans tend to kill one another. That's what we do. We not only have a potential to love and to have compassion, but we also have an incredible potential to extort and to coerce and to kill. And this is constantly going on in our life. And this can happen in an individual, where 1 minute we are loving someone or caring for them or having compassion on them, and the next minute we are killing someone. I mean, I grew up watching Scarface. I mean, you watch Scarface, man, and you got the mob, but the mob's totally taking care of their kids. They totally love their family. They want to love them right. They want to do everything, but what they do, they kill everybody else. It's unbelievable, right? Humans are a mess. And here we see that the ruling power, man, wants to kill him, and Jesus is telling his disciples. And then he said to the crowd, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must turn from your selfish ways and take up your cross daily and follow me. You must try to hang on. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, that's the important thing, for my sake, it says you will save it. Selfishness, right? Turn from my selfish ways. What is more selfish than saying, hey, Jesus, I don't need you. I don't need the Father. It's going to be about me. My identity, my stuff. It's about me. It's all about me. It's about my autonomy. That's right. I'm going to be so autonomous that I'm not even going to care about the collective, right? Doesn't matter if I hurt the collective. No way, because it's literally about me. Jesus says, unless you turn from your selfishness, you turn towards me for my sake, you will lose it. You will gain the whole world, yeah, but you will lose your soul. And he says, what does it benefit? This is verse 25. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world, but you yourself are lost or destroyed? If anyone is ashamed of me and my message, the Son of Man will be ashamed of that person when he returns in his glory and in the glory of the Father and the holy angels. And I tell you the truth, some standing here right now will not die before they see the kingdom of God. Man, it's going to be some incredible stuff going on. Obviously, Jesus knows of his purpose. He knows of his plan. He spoke in ways that we would have just been like, what are you talking about, dude? Okay, coming in the Father's glory, coming in your glory, the glory of the angels. There's going to be a time of this coming kingdom where there will be a reign of the king. And he will come with his servants. And it's going to be quite a remarkable time. And much of what we read in the Old Testament is spent on this time. And so Jesus believed Jesus believed that he would come and rule and reign. That's what he thought. That's what he taught. And then he says, some standing here are going to see something remarkable, this kingdom of God thing. And about 8 days later, Jesus took Peter, James, and John. So that's the inner circle. We see there's an inner circle here of meeting with these three. And it says, and as he was praying, the appearance of his face was transformed and his clothes became dazzling white. Then 2 men, Moses and Elijah, appeared and began talking with Jesus. You know, people thought Jesus was kind of maybe like a Moses, or maybe he was Elijah raised from the dead. Well, here you see Jesus obviously distinct from Moses and Elijah. And they appeared with Jesus, talking with Jesus, and they were glorious to see. And they were speaking about his exodus from this world, his departure. What did Jesus just get done talking to the disciples about? His departure, right? The leaders are going to kill me. And which was about to be fulfilled in Jerusalem. Isn't that interesting? So he's telling Moses and Elijah about his death, about the atonement, the sacrifice, the Passover lamb that would be slain. Whoa, man, they must have been like, wow-wee, to see the fulfillment of that for Moses and Elijah must have been amazing, right? And it says, Peter and the others had fallen asleep. That's really an interesting line. And they woke up and saw Jesus' glory and 2 men standing with him. And as Moses and Elijah were starting to leave, Peter, not knowing what he was saying, blurted out, Master, it's wonderful for us to be here. Let us make 3 shelters as memorials, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. But even as he was saying this, a cloud came over them, and terror gripped them as the cloud covered them. There's some really cool Bible studies. Again, I think it's always great to go to enduringword.com and check out David Guzik's commentaries on some of the details of this, because it is very cool. I would love to get in. You can get into all of it, but it's neat, right? These guys knew it was Elijah and Moses. They also wanted to make booths, like the Feast of Tabernacles. Why did they want to do that? What was that all about? But notice that they were gripped with fear. Oh my gosh, it was a very intense thing. Again, when something supernatural happens, biblically speaking, in the Bible, I notice it's a lot different than a lot of what people talk about. And I find that interesting, you know. A lot of people, when something supernatural happens, it's almost like, oh, it's a white light, you know, it's so beautiful. And it seems like every time someone sees something radical in the Bible, something that's very supernaturally glorious, an angel, Jesus, this kind of thing, it's always very intense. It's scary, you know. And it says, then a voice from the cloud said, this is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him. When the voice finished, Jesus was there alone and didn't tell anybody at that time what he had seen. Okay, so a voice comes out. This is my son, my chosen one, my Messiah, the Messiah. You know, everybody's got a Messiah. You got a Messiah. It doesn't matter who you are, whoever you're listening to. If you're listening to this, you're listening to someone who you think is the Messiah, you think is the person. They're the anointed one. They might be a professor in college. They might be the book writer. They might be the YouTube person. They might be that, influencer, whoever it is. But that is your Messiah. That's the person you're looking to. That's the person that's your go-to. That's your go-to person, And really, you got to ask, really, who are you going to? I love it that in the Bible you have from the Father to the Son an approval. This is my son, my chosen one. The next day, after they had come down from the mountain, a large crowd met Jesus. By the way, it's nice to go to a mountain, right? And get a little retreat going. A man in the crowd called out to him, "Teacher, I beg you, look at my son, my only child. An evil spirit keeps seizing him and making him scream. It throws him into convulsions so that he foams at the mouth, and it batters him, and he hardly ever leaves him alone. It hardly ever leaves him alone." And it says, "I begged your disciples to cast out the spirit, but they could not do it." And as the boy came forward, the demon knocked him to the ground and threw him into a violent convulsion. But Jesus rebuked the evil spirit and healed the boy. Then he gave him back to his father, and And awe gripped the people as they saw this majestic display of God's power. And while everyone was marveling at everything he was doing, Jesus said to his disciples, "Listen to me and remember what I say. The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of his enemies." But they didn't know what he meant. Its significance was hidden from them, so they couldn't understand it, and they were afraid to ask him about it. A lot of fear prevents us from probably going forward, right, and asking questions, or, hey, I'm afraid to ask a question. What if this person mocks me? By the way, are you a person that, you kind of put things in a way that, people can't ask you questions because, you've put a criteria on it. You got to ask it a particular way. You got to ask it this kind of way. And most people just don't have the skills, meaning most of us just don't have a lot of skill to understand exactly what you're talking about. And when it's a subject matter that you're not too sure of anyway, you just rather not even ask the question. You're just going to bolt later, dude, whatever, if there's some kind of stipulation on how I need to ask, a question. When you don't know a subject matter well, you just want to, you have a lot of questions, and they might be what we call not very intellectual questions, but you just don't know the subject matter that well. And a lot of times we're scared to ask. Man, I kind of wish the disciples weren't so scared, that they would sit and talk more with Jesus about this, but the subject matter was so scary to them. Jesus talking about his death. I love Jesus' compassion to heal a boy that is being, tormented. How many of our young people are being tormented, going through so much difficulty, and are we open to get into their lives and be a part of the healing in their lives? Or are we so afraid of what they're doing or what's going on in their life that we distance ourselves, we separate ourselves, instead of by faith going forward to maybe be a part of healing? Instead, we pull back because we're so afraid, And I'm sure the disciples were like that, kind of fearful of everything. Everything Jesus is telling us, he's going to die, blah, 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 demon possession, blah, blah, then that kind of thing, instead of moving forward in faith and in confidence that God's with them right there. They just got done seeing the transfiguration for a few of them. Come on, pull it together. But it's funny. Yesterday's amazing experiences are forgotten today. You notice that? Yesterday's, glorious experience, is a lot of times forgotten today. It's beautiful when we can look back and go, man, remember that? And it really has an effect on today, where I know God's going to be with me today because I remember that he was with me back then. But it's not necessarily that way, right? Fear still grips us. Insecurities still grip us. Though we have seen God provide. God's parted the Red Sea. God's delivered us from the enemy, this kind of thing. But yet we still fall into those fears and insecurities and all the resentments and yuck. Interesting. Then his disciples began arguing which of them was the greatest, but Jesus knew their thoughts. So he brought a little child to his side, and he said to them, "Anyone who welcomes a child like this on my behalf welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me also welcomes my Father who sent me. Whoever is least among you is the greatest." And I love that. Jesus just gets radical with them. Oh, you guys want to be the greatest? Okay, man, let's just hang out with children. You want to be the greatest? Let's go do children's ministry. Hey, you really want to be great in the kingdom of God? You really do? You really, really, really do? Then you know what I'm going to say. Go into some kind of helping kids. What's your heart like for kids? You really want to be a servant? Those people can't pat you on the back. Those people aren't going to be able to give you money. Those people aren't going to be able to, build a website for you, get your YouTube channel going, distribute your, your stuff, get your clientele going, no, nothing. You're not going to be able to do any of that. You're not going to even probably get a thank you. Is your heart really that way just to do it? Just because you love the Lord? Just because you enjoy Jesus? Or is there some kind of payoff? Is that pride just oozing out of us? Just oozing, coming out of the pores. We might think we're walking with the Lord, right? But boy, Jesus knows how to put us in our spot, right? Yeah. Let's go hang out with some kids. Let's go serve. Do you welcome me like these kids? Do you welcome me like the children? Just enthusiastically. Wanting to listen, wanting to be around, wanting to adore. Is your affections for me? Like these kids who are so affectionate. When a kid loves you, it's so amazing. I had a kid the other day. I was at a baseball game, and this beautiful kid just enjoyed my company, I guess, and just started saw my wife behind me. My wife was rubbing my shoulders, and the kid just joined in. It was so cute, rubbing my shoulders. Am I like, do I have that heart where I go, man, I just want to be around this person. Just be affectionate, just love, care, have compassion. Jesus is the master teacher for sure. And John said to Jesus, Master, we saw someone using your name to cast out demons, but we told him to stop because he isn't in our group. And Jesus said, don't stop him. Anyone who is not against you is for you. I love it. And, they are the arbiters of what is really right and what is wrong, the disciples. I mean, they've hung out with Jesus a little bit. They're the apologists now. They're the ones that really know, we know if they're really for you or against you, Jesus. Oh, yeah, we'll take that. I tell you, this kind of attitude is in us alive and well, right? This isn't a person in our group, They're not part of us, so hey, Bubba, I don't know about them, this kind of thing. It's just awesome, right? Jesus' teaching is amazing. It's so good. It reveals just how far we are from Jesus, and how we get a little knowledge, and knowledge what? Puffs up. Knowledge puffs up, but love edifies. And as the time drew near for him to ascend to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out to Jerusalem, focused. And he sent his messengers ahead to Samaritan village to prepare for his arrival. But the people of the village did not welcome Jesus because he was on his way to Jerusalem. And when James and John saw this, they said to Jesus, Lord, should we call down fire from heaven and burn them up? But Jesus turned and rebuked them, so they went on to another village. Hey, they don't want to be a part of this? Man, help us. Jesus, we're going to call fire down from heaven, kind of an Elijah work, and, an Elisha kind of idea, these kind of prophets with some amazing things going on. Let's call down fire. Are you vengeful? Are you quick, to the punch? Are you quick? Are you quick to react to that comment, on the website? Are you, I got to get back to I got to get at them. I got to call down fire, on these people, because they're rejecting. I'm going to call down fire, on my comments on the internet. Are you quick like that? Or can you just say, hey, we are praying for you. The end. And because that's what we should be doing. Praying for our enemies. Right? Doing good to those who spitefully use us because we're doing the work of Christ. And it says, as they were walking along, someone said to Jesus, I will follow you wherever you go. But Jesus replied, foxes have dens to live in, and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. You sure you want to follow me? And he said to another person, come follow me. And the man agreed. But he said, Lord, let me first return home and bury my father. But Jesus told him, let the spiritually dead bury their own dead. Your duty is to go and preach about the kingdom of God. Another said, yes, Lord, I will follow you, but first let me say goodbye to my family. And Jesus told him, anyone who puts a hand to the plow and then looks back is not fit for the kingdom of heaven. You know, Jesus makes it plain that we are to be like those kids, that when Jesus says, hey, you know, it's time to follow me, that we go, you know what, man, you're so right. Yeah, let's go do it. You know, it's like the adult starts walking and all the kids follow, you know, we just start running after him. Yeah, let's go do it. You know, Jesus says, you know, that excitement, not this kind of like, oh man, yeah, I'll go, but you know, I first, you know, I got stuff to do, you know, and there's other things happening. You know, is my enthusiasm for the Messiah, you know, what's it like? Do I adore Jesus so much that I want to follow him? Because I'm going to follow someone. I'm going to follow something. You know, what is it? Like you just follow everybody else, the Joneses, you know? Everybody else bought a house, so I'm going to buy a house. Everybody else is doing this, so I'm going to do this. Everybody else does that, so I'm going to do that. You know, kind of thing. Instead of going like, hey, where's my Father? Where's the Messiah? That's where I want to be. You know, that kind of idea. So very cool chapter. There's a lot there to study. A lot of great stuff. Love this section of Luke. It's so power-packed, man. There's so many great sections. You can take any section and just make a devotion out of it. So God bless you guys. Have a great day. And tomorrow, Good Friday. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.